Okay, we're live again. My phone is still charging. Miracles. Miracles. Okay, so where are we at, y'all? I'm gonna go gadget go. Okay. And we have card slots. I finished mine while I was waiting for my phone to charge a bit. And a zippered pocket, right? Okay. So the next thing I do is put my phone back in the Kleenex box where it's happy. Ha ha ha. Ish. Good. Okay. You guys can see this. So this is my card slots. I've top stitched the top and bottom. And what I'm going to do now is trim my edges. So it's supposed to be 8 inches wide. Sometimes it gets a little wobbly and it gets a bit extra, like especially over here. You can see this fuzz. Makes everything a little bit harder to work with later. Oh, you know what I didn't do with this one? I didn't stitch the center flap. This happens to all of us sometimes, even after I've sewn it together. So, I'm gonna sew it now. I could still see my hair marker after all that time. 4 inches. Now, what I do to line this up is I actually put my 4 inches to the scant side, so it's going to be a little less than 4 inches over here. And tidy up that raw edge. And then I flip it around and I do the same thing. My 4 inches gets lined up to that center line. And take off all that extra fluff. Okay, so now this piece is going to be 8 inches exactly, or a little bit less. Okay, so card slots are done. The zipper pocket is done. Here's my flap. Now, this time, I'm going to use a chalk marker just so you guys can see. Normally, again, I use my Hera marker and just put a groove in it. Okay. So, I draw a line that's 1 1/4 inches. Love this little ruler. From the bottom. Okay. Oh, I should mention this line is for anybody that is doing this style of anchor strap. Okay. If you're going to do this style, ignore this completely because I'm so sorry. I think it's done. Okay. So, draw this line for this style. Got it? Otherwise, leave it alone. The other thing that you need to do is fold it in half and find your center. Okay. And you can always come back and double check. This piece is 8 1/2 inches wide, and so that little line should be at 4 1/4. I don't even know if y'all can see that, but 4 1/4. Okay, this line up here is to mark my snap, so everybody that's doing a magnetic snap needs one of these. Okay. Now here is my folded anchor strap, sorry, and my 2 D-rings. So I'm just gonna feed my D-rings onto my little line here. Okay, so the part that's raw edged at the back gets laid down at the center, and everything gets lined up to that line you just drew, just below it. Yeah, makes sense? Okay, so I'm going to top stitch this in place. Maybe. Nope, not aimed at the right thing. Here. Ah, ha, ha. Don't you guys love this? Kind of makes you pukey, hey? Makes me pukey. Okay. There we go. All right, so center, lined up. Pull my D-ring out of the way. Stitch length is at 3. I'm as close to the D-ring as I can. My walking foot is actually setting on the D-ring when I turn and go sideways. Okay. So, anchor strap, yeah? If you were doing the other style, what you want to do is take your 2 pieces that you've cut. Sorry, I have to figure out where it is and where are my other D-rings. Okay, so same thing. We're going to feed a D-ring onto each side. Woo-hoo-hoo. Okay. 1/2 inch D-ring. Okay, and then what you would do is top stitch around it. It's longer than you need by far. Same thing, I go right up to the D-ring. And stitch around the 3 sides. Okay? Right? So now, if I had both of those sewn, I can tack them into place 1 inch from the edge. So I'll take a ruler, I'll measure in 1 inch, I'll set my D-ring. My D-ring needs to be about 3/4 of an inch above the bottom of the seam. And I'll do the same thing, and I'll just tack them both on so that when it's all assembled. This is what happens when I try and sew after school. Okay, so, make sense? Good. Now, we need to sew an exterior of our flap. All right, so I cut my cork. My strap is 16.5 inches by 1. If you're using cork has stretch in one direction, so try and make sure that you give it a tug. It shouldn't have any pull. If you could see, if I tug it this way, it actually does have a little bit of pull. So no tug means your stitches aren't going to snap because they're stretching it or pulling anything too hard. Okay. So the next thing you want to do is decide how wide your arrow is going to be for your V. This is a 2-inch strip, so it's 2 2-inch strips that are 8 inches long. Okay, and all I've done is I've put them right sides together, and I've taken my ruler that has a 45-degree angle on it. Hope y'all can see this, sorry. You can see how that edge is lined up, and I'm going to take my rotary cutter and I'm going to cut that off like this. Ta-da. Right? Okay, so I have 2 of these, and because they were right sides together, they're going to be opposite angles. Okay? So then You also need to cut a 6.5-inch square and a 4.5-inch square, and then literally take your ruler and cut them in half from corner to corner so you have 2 equal-sized triangles. Okay? So now I have small triangle, big triangle, funky line, right? Okay, so I need to tilt this just a titch. Sorry, guys. It's just down at the bottom here. So what I'm looking at first is I'm going to lay this the way that it's going to lay on my wallet so that this is my center line. And I'm going to take one of my small triangles and I'm going to lay it the way that it would go on my piece. Okay? I'm going to fold them right sides together. And if you can see, I've got a little overlap so that I've got a 1/4 inch. You want to make sure that your seam allowances are the same. Even if they're not perfect, they need to be the same because otherwise your arrows don't line up. So I'm sewing at a 1/4 inch. I'm going to shorten my seam length or stitch length, and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch all the way across. Is that a little better? Maybe. And I'm going to do that for both sides. So here's my other angled piece. This is going to go on this side. So that means that this triangle fits here. Okay? So what that's going to give me is that piece right there. Yeah? Okay, so same thing. I'm going to fold them right sides together. There's going to be a 1/4 inch overlap, and I'm going to sew it a 1/4 inch seam. Okay. Then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to top stitch on either side. And because I'm using cork, I actually want to press my seam open. I finger press it and then stitch on either side of that seam, keeping that in place. So, increase my stitch length. When I get to the other side, I turn it around and go back. And I do the same for the other side. So, centerpiece, I'm going to take my other triangle, my big triangle this time, and I center it. I like to leave a little bit of space up here. So, I don't know, what is that, about an inch, 3/4 of an inch? Doesn't really matter, just a bit. Okay, I'm going to sew that seam, 1/4 inch. And I'm going to repeat on the other side. Okay, this goes to the center, so this one finishes it. Oh, sorry guys. Right sides together, leaving some space at the top. Same thing again. Open it up, stitch on either side of that seam. Okay? Repeat for the other piece. So now I have one piece like this and one piece like this, right? Okay, so usually what I do is I put them right sides together and I line it up so that these seams match here and the seams match here at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to jam a clip in the bottom. Okay, because what we want to do now is sew these two pieces together, and I want to make sure I have a nice straight edge to do that. So, still with my ruler with my 45-degree angle, right? 45-degree angle. I'm going to line that up to my sewing line, my cork line, something that's there that's solid and stitched true, and I'm just going to shift it back far enough that I can trim this edge. Alright, so one trim edge, my seams match. So this time I do it wide. I do a 3/8 inch seam, short seam length, and so now what we have is that. So let's do the same thing. I've opened it up and we've got this cork edge, so we're going to finger press it open, and then top stitch. So we have a lovely center seam on this, and we folded a lovely center seam on this. So I put this at the top of my wallet when the wallet's closed. So all I'm going to do is line up that center line to my seam. Okay. This spacing you can decide for yourself. I like about a 1/2 inch from there, just so that it's just the point, but that's personal preference. Okay, line up that. Now, if you're worried or you're using fabric, you can pin it in place, or you can trim your cork and clip it. I don't. Just hold in place. So we're sewing 1/4 inch. I back stitch at the start and the end. Go slow around your corners. sovereigns with me. I haven't cut my backing down or my exterior down. I've just sewn my lining to it. Okay. And the next thing I'm going to do is take that rotary cutter again and trim that down. I ordered myself a new blade for this too, and I just haven't put it on yet, but okay. Oh, doesn't that look tacky? Pull all the extra bits off. So I've just done a quick pinking along the edge, making sure I didn't trim my seam. And I jam my fingers in there and turn this right side out. Okay. Now you can take it over the iron and give it a quick press. Quick being the operative word when you're using cork. Okay, so it's all pressed. And then the last thing that we need, sorry, is my piece of Peltex. Oh, here it is. So I do these a lot. I have a template cut out, same as my interfacing. This is essentially the wallet without the seam allowance. I take single-sided fusible Peltex and I put the fusible side down to my cork. And I literally just slide that baby all up inside, and you can see it fits in exactly the way it's supposed to. And then I also take another piece of cork, one of my Peltex, I'm sorry, one of my squares of Peltex, and I cut just a really slight curve in it to mimic, and you can see it's not great, to mimic the curve in this. And this time I want my fusible to go up towards my lining piece, and I just slide that up inside so that it's centered, and I zip back over to the iron, and I'm going to give all of this another quick press. Okay, so my interfacing didn't really fuse to my cork, which is great. I'm okay with that, but it's well fused to my fabric. Okay, and I'm just going to flip it over and top stitch around. All right, so our flap is basically done. You'll either have 2 tabs here or your anchor here. We need a snap. So this is where I put in my snap if I'm using magnetic. I always have one here to trace. And so because I've already marked that center line earlier, I'm just gonna whip out this ruler one more time and make sure, oh look, it's exactly 8 inches and it's exactly at 4 inches. So, yeah, Wendy, it's not going anywhere. It'll be up, we'll save it. Okay, so 4 inches. And, sorry, I need a writing utensil. So I have this center line marked, which I don't usually just color on it like that, just for the record. And I center my line up in the hole that's on that bracket. Okay, and then I take those two little lines and I trace them so that when I take it off, I've got a mark. Now I take my finger and I slide it in between, and somewhere in this chaos is my seam ripper. Do you guys lose your seam rippers? I lose them all the time. Okay, so seam ripper. In between the two pieces of Peltex, so I've got Peltex and cork, and then I've got Peltex and fabric. So I'm going to take the side with the Peltex and fabric, and those two little lines, I'm going to carefully cut them. Okay. I've seen a trick where you can actually set a pin here so that you don't actually go through it. I haven't had too many issues where I've gone through. Okay, so my hardware is from Emmeline Bags, who does the program. Okay, so here's my snaps. I'm going to take a male snap, and it's going to go through my holes, centered. It gets a washer on the back. And I use key fob pliers to do this, but you can use anything that works for you. But I just stick my key fob pliers in and use the flat edge to push those duotang little knobbies over. They're too hard for my fingers to do. And then once I've done that, I give it a clamp to make sure everything's all smushed nicely. Yeah, cool. Okay, so that is done. So all I'm going to do now is run a quick seam across the bottom of this to hold everything in place. Good, yeah. Sewn, everything is going to stay in place. I can trim off the excess. Okay, now we need a piece of cork. I've already cut mine. So here's my exterior cork. I used my template. Okay, and now we're going to flip it over to the back. That's the best way to show this to you. Okay, and I want to make sure that everything is lined up exactly perfect to the template, the way that I've cut it. And this is one of those moments where I use my white pencil because my cork is black. Sometimes it's cream colored and I use my pen, but what I'm going to do is use this lovely handy dandy little mark in my template to draw only the bottom 3 lines of my tab. And the reason for this is that I adjust where my tab is. So I actually draw a line that's 3/8 of an inch lower than that bottom, so that the snap ends up, the snap ends up being closer here. So you can see I've got the bottom marked and my line that's 3/8 of an inch below it. Okay. And then that's where we're going to line up that other little square of Peltex that's 1 3/4. Now, we're going to pick up the ruler I threw on the floor in a fit of rage. We're going to mark the center of that square. And do the same thing. Okay, so I marked the center of the square. I'm going to line the little cross up in the center. Draw those 2 lines. Okay. Yeah. So lined up in my square, but to the bottom at that 3/8 line. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing. Stab through my Peltex and my cork. Okay, and then I'm gonna find my female snap. And feed the female snap through the holes that I just made. Okay, same thing, put a washer on. Use my pliers. This one's easier because it's flat and I don't have to reach inside, but stab it flat. And then the other thing that I do is I have little pieces, you know those extra bits of interfacing? Take 2 of them. Make sure your glue side is down. And fuse a couple layers of interfacing over top of this snap so that the metal isn't going to wear through whatever fabric you have on your lining. All right, so we have an exterior with a snap. We have a flap. We have card slots. We have a zipper pocket. And I need a body lining. Where's that? Over here. Okay, this is the fun part, guys. Oh, did I draw lines? Yeah, I did. All right, ready? So, I did this in my video yesterday. If you just want to go over that part, it's really quick. But I lay my lining down with those lines marked and these lines marked. I take my flap and I put lining to lining and I center my flap within those lines that I've marked up at the top here. Okay. Take some glorious Wonder Clips. Okay. Awesome. Now, here's my exterior. Snap is going to go away from the flap. Line everything up. Okay, cool. Now we're going to sew this. When I sew, this is the side that my flap is on. This is the side my snap is on. So I start up here, I sew all the way around, and then I come back and sew over this one more time. Okay? Works way better when my needle's still threaded. Funny that, hey? I've sewn all the way around. That's all done. And I'm gonna take that rotary cutter again. I leave the flap alone. It's too many layers to cut through. Move my labels out of the way. Okay, so okay, done. Got it? So I've pinked all the way around the edge except for where my flap is. Now, you remember that crazy hole that I did earlier? This is why. Just take the whole wallet, shove it through. Okay. So the same thing, I just finger press all the way out. Press it all out, press it all out. Okay, looks good. I'm gonna hit it quickly with the iron and press everything down. Okay, quick press, super quick press. And there, guys, we're almost done. Okay, so I call this a pig. It's a scrap piece of paper, scrap piece of fabric that I sew on, so that if I start sewing on my project, I don't have a big snarl of bobbin thread anywhere. So we are going to top stitch around our wallet. All your little threads. Okay. Wallet, top stitched, snap. Okay, so now we're going to use those lines again to line up those pretty card slots, right? So they're marked at 8 inches. Should be about the same width as your wallet flap. This is one of those moments where I want to angle this down more, isn't it? So what I'm doing right now is I'm looking to make sure that I'm lined up at the bottom and the top, and the bottom and the top, and that I'm square between the top and the bottom. So it's just below my stitching line on both. I take a ruler and I lay that down. It ends up lining up square to the edge of my flap. And it's also going to intersect those two lines. I fold the edge of the wallet over, give it a good pinch. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, lined up to the edge of the flap, the lines that I've marked. Pull your ruler out, which I forgot to do, and clip that puppy. Okay, now I know that sewing this part is where a lot of us have issues on our domestics. So if you have that handy dandy set of pliers, right? We're going to take those pliers and we're going to pinch. For some reason, the starting one here is really hard for my machine, or can be. So give that a little pinch, and then I'll give this other one a pinch too, because this is the other place that sometimes I run into issues. Okay, so you're just compressing the fabric, you're making it easier to sew through. And I'm going to start on that little piggy again, and sew a 1/4 inch along the edge. Lift my needle here, I don't cut my thread. I'm going to go all the way across to the other side. Okay, cut that, cut that, cut that. So now we've got this, right? I'm going to take a second here and I'm going to cut all my little threads. Okay, so it's done. Now we're going to lay this open. You can give it a quick press if you want to help you. Okay. I'm going to angle you down again. So what I'm looking at here are these lines that I've marked already and the center line. So it's a nice little cheat right now to mark that center line where your card slots show up. Yeah, because I'm going to take that pocket that we finished earlier. I'm going to make sure that it's laid in nice and straight, my lining's not wrinkled. Okay, and then I'm going to lay it in square. Now, because I've made those little marks, it's really easy for me to tell where the center is. So I'm going to take that handy dandy little ruler again. I'm going to lay it up on that mark, and I'm going to lay it up on that mark. And then I'm going to mark my line. Okay, can you see that line? Yep. Okay, then I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to do the same thing. It's a 1/2 inch on either side of that center mark. Okay. Good, yeah, gorgeous. So, same thing, start on a pig, lift my needle. Now, I always lay it in my machine this way to do my square. I used to have troubles, I think it was with the magnetic snap catching, but for whatever reason it's easier for me to do it this way, and if I always do it the same way, it becomes a habit. So all I'm going to do is make sure my stitch length is at that nice long stitch at 3. And I'm going to stitch around the bottom of that rectangle. Okay, so I come as close to the edge as I can. It's probably like a top stitching 1/8 of an inch. And then back along the other line that I've drawn. Up the side and come back, throw my scissors on the floor, and back stitch. Pull my wallet out of there and cut those threads. Yeah, it's on there, Ella. I'll make sure that they both go online. Okay, so there's our rectangle stitched now. When we open it up, where's an easy one to see? I have my lines drawn. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my wallet piece up, line it up to that vertical line that I can see, and pinch around it. Okay? And hold it in place with my clips. Okay. Same thing on the other side. Oh, look at, there's a thread. Ah. Okay, so the same thing. I'm going to look at this line right here. I'm going to line this up and pinch around it. Okay. Line it up. Pinch around it. Clip it into place. Now, this is another spot where you can use those key fob pliers and give the top a little pinch. Mine's usually pretty happy and doesn't ever really have any issues, but you can help your machine along by giving it a little squish there. Okay, piggy. So when you go to sew this, pinch this and push everything else back as far as you can, okay? So that there's as little in the way as possible. Okay. Reversing at the start. Stitch your 2 inches, reverse at the bottom. Okay. Let's do it again. So we have our other side that's still pinched, right? Okay. So I'm going to take all of the rest of the wallet and pull it out of the way. Yeah, cool. Okay, and then you reverse at the bottom. Okay, so now I do the second pocket, same thing. Find my line, the same angle, pinch around it, add my clip. Okay, there's my line right there. Oops, sorry, there's my line right there. So find my angle, pinch around it, and clip. Okay, same thing. Pull all of the wallet behind it. There's not very much in there, look. Your machine can totally sew this, I'm telling you. Okay. Last one. Pull everything out of the way. Reversing at the top and bottom. Okay, look. That's it, guys. We're done. That's the wallet. I'm going to oh, here it is. Look. So here's that strap that we talked about. My wristlet, 1 inch by about 16.5, 17. You can alter it. I have a jar of swivel clips from, oh, where else but Emmeline. So I find a matching one for my hardware. Okay. I feed my swivel clip on. Okay. I'm making sure that it's not looped or folded, twisted, right sides together. Yeah. Right sides together. I stitched this one big, just like I did on the center of the flap, at about 3/8. And I go over it a couple of times, just because I want it to be secure. So now we're going to open it up and we're going to stitch on either side of that seam line. See how pretty it is? Ooh. Okay, trim your threads. Now, take where your seam is, right here, and fold this puppy in half. You can use clips. You can go around the whole thing with clips. You might have noticed already I don't like fiddling around with extra stuff, so I don't use clips, that is. So I start on my pig so I don't get a tangle of thread, and I lift my needle up and I stitch those two raw edges together. All the way around the circle. When you come to your pig, you just cut it off. When you come to your hardware, you just roll it around the tube. Okay, so once you're back to where you started, give it a quick reverse to secure your stitch. I just lift up my needle again and twist it over, and then stitch the folded edge. And you have to cut that little string. And I go all the way around the loop, moving my hardware out of the way. Back stitch and cut it. So now we have a few extra threads, so just make sure that your threads are all tidied and off. Okay, and then the other thing is that where you folded it, there is a little bit of a little edge. So take your scissors or your rotary cutter, just square that off tidy. Okay, so this is where my seam is, this is loop, this is all raw edge. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my hardware to the outside of my loop, or fold my loop the other way around, and I fold it so that this is just behind where the loop is. Okay, so now when I stitch it to secure it, I'm going to stitch here and over here somewhere, and that's going to hold all of those layers together and take some of the strain off of that seam right there. So, with Piggy. All I've done is sewn forwards, reverse, forwards, and then switched it over and went forwards, reverse, forwards. Okay, so the last thing that I do with this strap I can't find it. Where'd it go? Other room. Hold on, I'm coming. 1 second. Oh, here it is. Sorry that took so long. Giardini. Anyways, edge coat. I've heard people say that it goes hard, but this is a big one. I've had it for over a year at least, and it's not hard. And so rather than use this giant container all the time, what I actually do is put a little mason jar full. And this just sits here, and whenever I need to use it, I will edge coat that. So this just snaps onto one or the other. Okay, sorry guys, it's all sideways, but let's do this way. How's that? Okay, are you ready? Snap. Look, everything's lined up. That's it. Easy peasy. Okay, so I'm going to pick this up. I can turn around again. Okay. That's the wallet. I am going to do shorter bits so that you don't need to watch it all in one go. I'll add the YouTube channel on here. I'm just starting it. And if you have any questions, send me a message, comment on here. And if you need to buy one of my creations, send me a message on here. Okay, bye guys.